Hello everyone, this is Ashley Tucker. Thank you for joining me today. I started out today's cards by creating a few watercolor backgrounds using these Aqua Pigment paints from Brutus Monroe. I have shown this technique before with the Aqua Pigment paints, but I really love it. It's a great technique for making some really quick and easy backgrounds. So for this technique, you have to pick out a few different colors that go well together, and then you just lay them down on either a craft mat, or in my case, I'm using the Tim Holtz glass mat. Once I have that color laid down on the mat, I sprayed it with a little bit of water. I don't like to use too much water because any water you add is going to water down those colors a little bit, and I want my colors to be very vibrant. As you can see, I took a piece of Canson watercolor paper and I pressed it right down into that paint. One thing that I find really fun about this technique is you don't really know what you're going to get when you're doing it until you get it and you look at it. So when you flip that paper over, it's kind of like a surprise. So with this first one, I kept pressing it down until I was happy with the way that it looked. And every time I press it down, you can see that there's some little interesting water patterns that are happening there. And when I was happy with it, I placed it aside and let it dry. Now, I still have quite a bit of paint there, so I'm going to take another sheet of Canson watercolor paper and press it into that paint and create a second background. I could only get 2 out of these paints because I let them mix quite a bit, and once I got to the third one, they were completely mixed together and it was only one color. But if you're careful and you keep your colors kind of separated, you could get a lot more backgrounds out of all that paint. Once both of those backgrounds were dry, I took a large circle die and I cut both of them into circles. I then took that same circle die as well as a circle die that was a little bit smaller, and I created 2 frames out of some white cardstock. I also cut 2 circles out of acetate, and then I took some Gina K Designs Connect glue and I put it around the frames and glued them to the acetate to create some shaker windows. I took a really long piece of foam tape and I folded it in half so that it's twice as thick, and then I cut it down the center so that I have 2 really long, really thin pieces of foam tape. Before I started placing that foam tape around my frame, I made sure to take the backing paper off of both sides. If you only take the backing paper off of one side, it can be difficult to curve the foam tape around the circular shape. But if you take it off of both sides, it makes it so much easier to curve that tape so that it can be easily placed around the shaker window. Now, my piece of foam tape was just shy of being long enough for this shaker, so I did have to cut a small piece and fit it in there so that I have a complete circle. The sequins that I picked out to fill my shaker are from Lucy's Cards, and this mix is called Pastel Paradise. I have my shaker window sitting on top of my background so that I have a good idea of what these sequins are going to look like against that background before I have to close it up. Next, I took out these clear micro pearls from Brutus Monroe and I added a couple spoonfuls of that to my sequin mix. And of course, I'm only showing what I did for one of the cards, but I did the same exact thing with the other background that I created. So I closed up my shaker and then I just took some scissors and I cut off some of that excess background that was showing around the edge. This is my first time using those micro pearls, and I really love the way that they look in the shaker. I'm not sure how well you can see them in the video, but in real life they add a really interesting element to your shaker cards. For my sentiment, I took a piece of Bazzill Licorice Twist cardstock and I prepped it with a powder tool for embossing. I picked out a stamp which says Happy Birthday, and this comes from the Super Sentimental stamp set from Brutus Monroe, and I stamped that with Versamark ink and then I embossed it with Alabaster white embossing powder. After I finished the first sentiment, I did stamp and emboss the second one so that I have one for each of my cards. I created a couple of 5x5 card bases out of some white cardstock, and then I took some Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock and I cut 2 pieces that are both 5x5 and I adhered them to the front of each of the card bases using my ATG gun. Next, I took both of my circular shakers and I glued them in the center of my cards right in the middle of that fog cardstock. And I just kind of eyeballed the center, and I only placed it very gently at first so that I could adjust it if I needed to. And once I was happy with the placement, I pressed down. I used a T-square ruler in order to kind of help me find the center of my card. And then I took my sentiment and I popped it up right in the middle of the shaker using some foam tape. To finish up my cards, I went over those sentiment strips with my Wink of Stella glitter brush to give them a little bit of shimmer. Here's a closer look at both of my finished cards, and you can see that really gorgeous background that was created using those Aqua Pigment paints. And I hope you can see those micro pearls, but I'm afraid that the camera just doesn't do them justice. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you really enjoyed these card designs and learning a little bit about an easy technique for creating those watercolor backgrounds. All of the supplies that I used for today's cards can be found in the description down below. If you enjoyed watching today and you're brand new to my channel, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you can see all of my future videos. I'm going to be back with a new video on Friday. Again, thank you so much for watching today. I appreciate you, and I hope you have a good day today.